What's up guys, in today's video we are jumping back on what is probably the longest running build series for a motorcycle on YouTube, and that's my BMW R65. So I've been very distracted over the last couple of weeks with a huge side project that I'll announce in the future, but I have a little bit of time today and I'm dying to make at least some progress on this thing. So the obvious thing that stands out to me as a good next step is finish welding. So in a previous video we made this kind of section of the rear swing arm, which needs all of it to be final welded. It's all just tacked right now. We have some welding to do on the rear subframe as well. Ideally, if all that goes well, we'll move on to pulling this engine back out of the frame so I can do some finish welding on that as well. Before we get started on this though, let me show you a new toy I just got. And here she is in all of her glory. So this is the latest combination AC, DC, TIG, MIG, stick, everything you could possibly want to do welder from Eastwood. It's the MP200i, and this thing is a game changer. So I've been in the market for a new welder for honestly probably like a year and a half, something like that. Because my shop isn't huge, I really wanted an all-in-one machine, but until now you had to pay like $5,000–6,000 to get an all-in-one machine where you don't lose features that you want. So basically I had a Eastwood TIG 200 I've had for years and years and years. Great machine, but a little bit on the simpler side as far as settings. It doesn't have pulse, it didn't have a couple of other things that I wanted. I have a Eastwood MIG 135 MIG welder that has been a great little machine, but it's little. It's a 110 volt machine, so you can't really weld some real thick stuff. It's a little bit kind of beginner level as far as the settings for wire speed and voltage and that kind of stuff as well. So I wanted a machine that was an upgrade of both of the machines I have in one unit. And here she is. One of the things I'm most excited to try is the pulse, and we're going to play with that a little bit later. So what pulse is you can set how often your amperage kind of goes up and down at a set pace to help to control like temperature input basically into your part. So if you're welding a thinner material and you don't want a ton of heat in it, you can set it to kind of pulse on and off automatically instead of you have to try to modulate that with your foot. So that's one feature I really wanted. I'm excited about that. And then there is just a huge amount of settings that I don't even know what to do with that kind of gives me an opportunity to grow in my welding, so to speak. So that's really exciting. Really cool features. It does have two gas bottles, if you can see on the back of that. So I have a 100% argon for TIG welding, and then I have a mix 75-25 for MIG. And you can easily, just whatever setting you're on, it's going to pull gas from that side, which is really cool. I don't have to worry about switching hoses and bottles and that kind of stuff. It's set up and ready to go. It has a true rocker style foot switch. Instead of the old style I had in my last TIG welder, this one you put your whole foot on, much easier to modulate. It does have the ability to do stick welding, which I don't know that I'll ever use, but really exciting. I'm very stoked on this machine. All right, I got it set up over here for our first run. I have the machine on kind of behind the camera over there. You can probably hear it. It's a little heavier duty machine than my last one, so it does have a little bit louder fan, but that's to be expected. I'm not even sure if the fan runs all the time, but got our torch all set up. I went ahead and put a clear glass lens on here. I've never tried those out before. I don't even really know what the benefit of that would be, but it looks cool. I can see I'll probably break a tungsten and grind it smaller so I can put a smaller cap on it just to have this be a bit more maneuverable. But I'm going to try it with no pulse or anything yet, just to kind of get a feel for it, and then we'll move on and try the pulse. Wow. I could be biased, but I feel like, and it's gonna sound like I'm making this up, but I feel like the arc is more stable than the old machine. Like it just feels, maybe it's the foot pedal. I bet that's it. Though I think the foot pedal gives me so much more control that I feel like where my foot's actually at is the amperage I want, where the old one I felt like it was just kind of like, maybe it was a little bit over, a little bit less. It was much harder to modulate, I guess would be the proper way to say that. Man, that felt really good. Well, that was pretty cool. Now that I have those two things finished welded, I want to move on to the frame, and I really just need to get this motor out of here first. So I'm going to lower the bike down. If I remember correctly, I was able to pull this out by myself last time. Ideally, I would have a second set of hands, but I don't have anybody here to help me at the moment. So I'm going to lower it down, pull the bottom engine mounts out. I'm pretty sure we can just kind of lift and tilt it towards the back and pull it out this side. I'll just throw it on the ground over here. We do need to do kind of a semi-rebuild and upgrade to this engine. We'll most likely do that while it's out of the bike. Here we go. Now we can. Easy as that. So next I want to test out the fitment of this tank again with our battery in its final spot and make sure all this is going to clear. So that will be welded about right there. Looks like plenty of room. Okay, perfect. That'll be able to be pulled back. Yeah, that should be great. All right. I'm going to switch the welder back into MIG for this. Since I don't have three hands, it'll be much easier for me to be able to hold it and just pull a trigger. Give that another test. Very nice. Awesome. Now we can redo the rear mount. I pulled all that off when I was doing the rear suspension, so I need to get back in here. I also want to make sure this is level for obvious reasons. It's looking really good. Went ahead and whipped up this little bracket. It's just a piece of flat bar with a couple of bends in it that should match the frame right there. Get that kind of roughly set in place so I can take my hand off of it. Something about like that. Yeah, I think that'll be perfect. Give us a good angle for where it matches up with the seat. Sweet. So I think that'll be great. Before I weld that in place, I've noticed a bit of a mistake. So the issue we need to address now is whoever welded on this rear suspension mount, and it's not fully done yet, it's still tacked in place, did not account for needing to remove the bolt, which of course is a silly mistake to make, but we don't know who to blame for that. So what I need to do now is figure out a creative way to give myself a little bit of clearance for this, because I really don't want to redesign this whole thing now that I know it works properly. I have a plan. So I want to get this frame mounted up on my mill, because trying to do this by hand I think is just a recipe for disaster. I can't really get an angle grinder in here to even start to remove material. I couldn't really do this by hand with a hole saw either, because I'm only cutting half of the size of the hole saw, probably 1 inch in this case, and that's just almost impossible to do by hand. So I really need to have this rigid mounted, and then have, you could probably pull it off on the drill press, but I might as well use the mill. I'm either going to come in here with a hole saw straight down. I also have the possibility of going in sideways with the end mill and basically just kind of chewing away at it until I have just enough clearance to get a piece in there that I can weld and obviously get our bolt in and out. Should be ready to go. I got a 1-inch, it's more of like an annular cutter than it is anything else. Got it lined up with the center line of where our bolt will go, and then probably not quite far enough in this way, but I'd rather remove less material than required. So let's see how it goes. So what I need to do now is take this is probably 120 wall tubing, slide it in there, mark all the way across, and then just cut out that half moon shape to get it to weld in there. Once I get it cut out, I'll put it back in here and just confirm that adding that wall thickness hasn't made our clearance too tight. I think it'll be just fine, and we'll be able to weld that in, be good to go. And there's my little piece tacked in place. You can see, can just sneak a bolt in there, sneak it right back out. So now I'm just gonna TIG weld that all up and sand it down, and it'll look like it was factory. And after just a little bit of welding and grinding, we are done. All the clearance we need. That once it's painted black, it'll be under the seat. It'll completely disappear. Absolutely just as strong as it ever was, so I don't have to worry about that. Sweet, I'm happy. So that's where I'm gonna call it on this video. I believe that is the last bit of fabrication I'm gonna need to do on the frame. Fingers crossed, I guess only time will tell. So now the only thing left is to run around, do a couple of finish welds, a lot of grinding and cleaning up, and then we're ready to give this frame a coat of paint. So I'm probably just gonna use my standard VHT roll bar and chassis paint. I've always had really good success with that. I do wanna order the parts needed to rebuild my final drive. When I pulled that off, I realized it was leaking, and it's just leaking that final drive oil onto the brake shoes, which is obviously gonna make them completely useless. So we definitely wanna rebuild that before we put it back on the bike. So I'm gonna get those parts on the way. In the next video, I am probably gonna tear into the engine because we do need to put on a bunch of parts, get us some more power, that kind of stuff. You'll see that in the future video. I appreciate you guys watching this one as always. I do also have a Will It Run in the works as well, so you guys will see that very soon as well. So I'll see you then.